Kansas City in the 2023 NFL Draft. With the 19th pick, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers select Calijah Kancey.
We can't wait to see you, and we are pumped here.
Excited to be here, man. I can't wait to get to work. Got that call, and it was just life-changing. And I'm ready to get this organization everything I got.
Cody Mauch.
I go out there, get the job done, and I just have fun doing it.
Yeah. Hey, this is Jason Light in Tampa. We're about to make you a buck. I got a good one, Coach. I'm telling you. Hey, Payne, this is Jason Light. Seratier? Hey, Josh. This is Trey. Jose, you're about to watch your name go up. We are about to make a pick here. We're going to make you a buck.
We're excited about the guys that we selected the last 3 days. We just tried to draft good players that were good kids.
My mama going to love this.
Hello and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to a brand new edition of the Cannon Fire Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Rhett Matthew, joined alongside me, my good buddy and co-host from BucsNation.com, Mr. Evan Wanish. Today, we will recap the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 2023 NFL Draft class and basically give out some grades on how we think Jason Light and the rest of that front office did, evaluating talent, acquiring said talent, and ultimately just how useful these guys are going to be to the franchise come week one of the 2023 NFL season. But before we dive into all of that, Evan, how you doing?
I'm doing well. It's crazy that the draft is already over. I know I mentioned that it sort of snuck up on us, but as soon as it sneaks up on you, it's gone like that. So it is a fun 3 days, but it is a quick 3 days. And now, already looking forward to next year, but we got a lot to do between now and then. So yeah, it was fun and ready to review these Bucs draft picks.
Yeah, an action-packed 3 days of picks for Tampa Bay. We'll obviously get into more detail here over the next hour or so, but now we officially enter what is known as the dead period, if you will. So between now and training camp, there really isn't going to be a whole lot of NFL news or developments. There is a second wave of free agency, if you will, so maybe we'll get some updates on some signings here and there as the Buccaneers ultimately look to pad out the rest of this team. But today we're going to focus on the draft picks, and we'll kick things off with round number 1, 19th overall. Defensive lineman from Pittsburgh, the Bucs drafted Calijah Kancey. Now, a surprising name in Calijah Kancey, because this was not someone that a lot of people were talking about before the draft and mocking him as a fit to the Bucs. But when you look at what he potentially brings to the table, you can understand exactly why Jason Light drafted this guy. Explosive first step at the 3-tech position, some fairly impressive pass rush prowess for an interior D lineman, 2022 ACC Defensive Player of the Year. 6'1", 281, kind of seen him compared to Aaron Donald and Warren Sapp. That's not really fair.
Can we stop?
to be honest, you know what I mean? Like names like that are obviously going to get a lot of clicks on the headlines when you draw comparisons. But I mean, it is way too early to tell. Measurables, sure, he's probably like an undersized Warren Sapp, but aside from that, I don't know how we can sit here and compare this guy to Sapp and Aaron Donald. I've even heard like John Randall in there as well.
That's the other one. Yeah.
I'm excited about what he brings to the table. Don't get me wrong. This doesn't mean I don't like the pick. I do think, though, the comparisons may just be a tad overboard here in the early going.
Yeah, can we stop? Can we stop comparing him to some of the greatest defensive linemen in the history of the NFL? Like, hasn't played a snap yet. So measurables wise, sure.
And no disrespect to Calijah Kancey. Obviously,
no, absolutely not. He very, very well could be.
He's a damn good football player. He's a damn good football player. I'll say that. I like him as a football player. I like the pick. I like that the Bucs went trenches here. This is what I was hoping they could have done, obviously. I know we talked a little bit about a quarterback situation, some other players they could have looked at with 19, but I'm glad they went trenches, and I like what this guy brings to the table because we've said it for weeks. They need to get younger at defensive line, and especially at the interior. This is solid reinforcements because I'm kind of left wondering what kind of impact Logan Hall's going to have this year. Is Will Golston going to be back? You still have Vita Vea and obviously Gaines now in the equation as well. But, this is another rotational guy who has a lot of great upside.
Yeah, you mentioned two things. One was a word and one was kind of a statement. The word being explosive. And I think that's a theme not just for this pick, but for Tampa Bay and the draft overall. I think we know they wanted to get more speed on the team. They wanted to be more explosive. And I think they did just that. And we'll talk about the rest of the picks later. But the other thing you mentioned was kind of this pick being a surprise and sort of unexpected. And one of the most interesting things to me, and I forget where I read this, but I believe it's an actual stat. The Buccaneers did not draft a single player that they had a top 30 visit with. They met with a few of them at the combine, but an official top 30 visit to Tampa, they did not draft a single player. So they really kept their cards close to the vest here. And obviously, yeah, Kalijah Cansey's the pick. There's a few other players on the board. Anton Harrison, who we had talked about extensively before the draft. The left tackle from Oklahoma ended up going a few picks later to Jacksonville. Obviously, the big one was Kentucky quarterback Will Levis. He was free falling, and I thought, honestly, I'm not gonna lie, full transparency, I thought there was a real chance that 19th overall would have been Will Levis. I thought there was a serious chance. I didn't think he was gonna fall, and when he did, I was like, man, like they might pick him. And then the other name was Georgia's Nolan Smith, who obviously went to Philadelphia because they just love collecting Georgia Bulldogs. But those three were on the board, and I figured one of those three would be the pick. So yeah, it was a surprise that Kancey was the pick. He is undersized, and that's one of the reasons I didn't think he would be of interest to them, because typically in a Todd Bowles defense, you don't see those undersized linemen too much. You don't see them smaller guys on the interior, but I think the Bucs and Todd Bowles know that they need to make some sacrifices and evolve some things and change some things if they're going to get more explosive. And Bruce Arians, before he retired last year, was mentioning at the combine how they needed to get more rush from the interior. They needed to get more pass rush. They were good at stopping the run. They weren't good enough to stop the pass. And that's one of the reasons I think that they lost to the Rams in that divisional round game. They could not get an interior pass rush. Obviously, it's a year late, but a guy like Kalijah Cansey, I think, will help with that eventually. He's not a finished product, but I think he's a player who can make an impact immediately and hopefully turn into a plus starter. Will he turn into a Hall of Famer? I don't know. Probably likely not, because that's impossible to predict. But can he be a really, really good player and a staple on this defensive line for years to come? Yeah, I think he could. So while it was a surprise pick, Kancey was somebody I liked. It's just not somebody I thought the Bucs would be. And that was more of the surprise rather than they went with that guy. It wasn't really that type of surprise. It was whoa, Kancey, wow. So good pick. We're also going to be grading each pick. So as they came in. So, do you want to do the grades now, or do we want to do individual? Or
no, we'll do it now.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and give our grade for the Kancey pick. I'll give it a B+. I like what he can bring to the table. I think the upside is legitimate, a little undersized, and like you said, kind of a surprise pick that we didn't entirely see coming. But I like it. I think he is a guy who can come in week one and have an impact along this defensive line. They've been getting younger, and they're going to invest in this young talent. So between him, Logan Hall, Greg Gaines, Vita Vea, maybe Will Golston if he's back in 2023. Hopefully we can see some more production out of this interior defensive line. Because I have to believe that there is much more upside for Kancey here than there is, some of the stopgap DTs we have had these last couple of years in regards to getting after the quarterback.
And, the interesting thing is I think this allows Logan Hall to be in a different spot in his defense. And a lot of people have had questions now with this Kancey pick. I mean, this is a first-round pick after you invested a second-round pick in Logan Hall.
And that's what I was going to ask you. I mean, this is maybe an odd way to put it, but if you had to guess, who sees the field more in 2023, just based off of snaps alone? Do you think it's going to be Kancey? Do you think it'll be Hall? Or do you think they ultimately wind up playing about the same?
I think it might be about the same. I think you're going to see the starting interior be Vita Vea with Kancey and Logan Hall sort of on his side, with Greg Gaines rotating in from now and again. I think Hall might take more of the Will Golston role now. That's being less asked of him as a pass rusher. I think Canty and Vita Vea will probably be asked a bit more to rush the passer. Canty's a guy who he might not. And this is the drawback on him. This is one of the drawbacks right now, as it stands in his rookie season. He may not be a 3-down player. He may be more of a 2-down player, more of a second and third down guy rather than first down, because he's going to get beat up in the run game a little bit. Like, there are going to be times this season when it's going to be a little ugly. Like, oh man, like they really, they really open up that hole on his side because that lineman was just able to push him around. It's going to happen a little bit. So that's what I think he'll be limited in. I think they play about the same. So I don't think Logan Hall's role on this team has diminished. I still like Logan Hall. Was it a pedestrian rookie season? Yeah, it was. But I think they still like him. And I think they want to see him develop a little bit more. As for a grade, I'm going to go with an A-. I like the player. I like the player. I think it's, what they need in my mock draft. I know I only 10 on here, but in my mock draft, I actually had Canty going 18th to the Lions right before the Bucs pick. So he ends up going 19th here. So I had his range about right, just not the team. But I thought it was a good selection, albeit a surprise, but still a good selection that I think fills a need for now and the future. So that's a bonus.
We have got a trade here in round 2 for Tampa Bay. They moved up 2 spots and gave up a 6th-round pick to get 48th overall, and they took North Dakota State offensive lineman Cody Mauch. This is...
Of course they did.
I mean, this is my favorite pick of the draft. Maybe I'm a little bit biased. Clearly the Buccaneers have a type now with another long-haired ginger along that offensive line.
I mean, they're going to draft you next.
That's what I'm telling you. Listen, if context clues are anything, what I know right now is that I need to go ahead and suit up and get out there. I think I need to spend this dead period that we had mentioned between now and the start of training camp. Might have to dial back the coverage a little bit, but I'm going to get in shape, and I'm going to go try and walk on here come training camp. I'm going to see if I can get out there, get an opportunity for myself. I think the odds are in my favor. Again, I'm not quite as
What position did you play in high school?
I was a center.
Oh, perfect.
I know. I'm telling you, buddy. Perfect. I'm telling you, get me in there for that guard spot. I mean, I probably can't play tackle. I don't think I have the height, but you like a short center, and I'm right around 6 foot even. So put on a little bit of weight, get me in a weight room, man. I'll be in there yucking it up with the boys.
You're gonna have to grow the hair out a little bit.
Yeah. Obviously gonna have to embrace the shag here. We're kind of in an awkward period. I was gonna see my barber this week, but things had to change. But let's talk about this pick. So is it Cody Mauch? Is it Cody Mauch?
I think it's Mauch.
I thought it was Mauch as well. I wasn't sure if I had heard any other pronunciation. So until I know
for right now, it'll be Mauch.
Well, let's talk about Mr. Mauch, man.
It's funny. I was on Bucs Nation's Mr. Bucs Nation's live stream when the pick happened, and the chat came up with 2. They came up with Mock Lesnar, and they came up with
Toothless aggression.
Yeah,
I like that one, man. I'm a big fan of it. But when you look at this guy, obviously he fits the mold of an offensive lineman. And if you know how Jason Light likes his O lineman, you know that he fits the mold even more. He likes those small school, big, ugly guys. And that's exactly what he is, man. Out of North Dakota State, he's got a little bit of a nastiness to his game. And obviously he can learn to take that to the next level playing behind a guy like Ryan Jensen. The more the merrier as far as pissing off the other team. So I'm excited at what he can bring to the table. He seems like a good-spirited guy, right? I mean, I know that you have to have a level of nastiness in the NFL, and maybe he'll get a reality check first few weeks of the league. He'll realize not everybody's as nice as they were in college, but he's just a guy he's just a football player. He's just a football player. Lost his 2 front teeth, I believe, his junior year of high school in a conference championship basketball game.
Basketball, yep.
Yeah, and never looked back. This is a guy who's also
went to North Dakota State as a tight end.
Yeah, walked on as a tight end. And my favorite thing about it is that comparison picture of the freshman year where he walks on with that little Ron Weasley haircut, and by the end of it, he's a big, beautiful, grown offensive lineman. But played mostly left tackle at North Dakota State, if I am not mistaken.
Yep.
Probably measures out as a guard in the NFL, but he is going to be a guy who's going to come in right away and compete for a starting guard job. And we can talk a little bit more about the offensive line with this pick as well, because it is officially being reported by Pewter Report that Tristan Wirfs is making the jump to left tackle. And the plan is for Luke Gedeke to have a chance to start at right tackle. So both of those guard spots are obviously going to be wide open for the taking. We'll see which one Mock ends up in if he wins that job. But he's going to have just as much a chance as anyone else to come in here and stake his claim. And I'm excited for it. High energy player, good attitude guy. And he's going to be learning from some really good teammates along that O-line.
Yeah, and the interesting thing now that you're going to look at in training camp is the battle along the interior offensive line. You have Cody Mock, you have Robert Hainsey, you have Nick Leverett, you have Aaron Stinney, and you have Matt Filer. So, and I know Matt Filer can play right tackle a little bit, but if they do keep Luke Gedeke at right tackle, you have to imagine that Filer could be in that mix for the guard spot. So that's 4 or 5 guys for 2 spots, and it'll be interesting to see how that all shapes out. And yeah, I mean, Cody Mock is absolutely a Buccaneers draft pick, a Jason Light draft pick, because all you do is look at the guy. But we'll see what happens. Will there be growing pains? I think so. Ali Marpet coming out of Hobart was a day one starter, was a good day one starter. That's, again, just like we talked about with Tristan Wirfs his rookie season. That for Ali Marpet, that was the exception, not the norm. And I know we're saying that a lot on this show in the past few weeks, but it's just trying to temper some expectations for some guys here. Because for as many, Ali Marpet's great year one. Luke Gedeke was in a similar spot, played right tackle in college at a small school, transitioned to guard in the NFL. And we saw how that went his rookie season. Alex Kappa, the same thing. Played tackle in college at a small school, transitioned to guard, and honestly was kind of underwhelming his first 2 seasons in the NFL. Like, it wasn't until about year 3 of that Super Bowl year that he came into his own as a quality starting guard.
And that's where he made his money. You know what I mean? Left Tampa Bay, got that big money contract in Cincinnati, playing the guard position. Like, that's just how it happens for some of these guys.
Yeah. So it might take some time for Cody Mock to get adjusted, and that's okay. And that's okay, partially because, I mean, we've talked about it before. Look, the Bucs aren't winning a Super Bowl this year. Like, their winning window for winning a Super Bowl, that window's closed right now. So you can kind of afford the growing pains of Cody Mock maybe struggling a little bit at times, because it's not as imperative to I'm not saying it's not as imperative to protect the quarterback, but it's a little different when it's Tom Brady versus when it's Baker Mayfield or Kyle Trask. It's a little different when the expectations are win the division versus see what the young guys can do. That's different expectations there. So I like the Mock pick. It is unlike the Cansey one. This was not surprising. They clearly liked him enough, and they thought somebody was going to grab him because they traded up 2 spots to get him. Gave up one of their many 6 that they had. So I'm going to give this one a B+.
Okay. I will give it an A. I guess we'll kind of swap our picks from before. I gave Cansey a B+. I think you gave him an A-, but
A-, yeah.
Yeah. I like the Mock pick. Like I said, that's my favorite pick of the draft. So I'll go ahead and give it an A. Let's go to the 3rd round here. 82nd overall, Louisville edge rusher Yaya Diaby. Did I say that correctly?
Yaya Diaby.
Diaby, there it is. So you wrap up day 2 with a pick that, again, kind of like Kalijah Cansey, a guy that I didn't see a lot of people talking about. You know what? I will say that I saw his name dropped a couple of times.
Shout out to Pewter Report. They've been on Diaby to the Bucs for a little bit now.
Yeah. And 2022 had a pretty good season. I think he had 9 or 10 sacks for Louisville, which was pretty damn good.
9 after having 1 in the previous 3 seasons.
Yeah. 9 sacks in a year is pretty good. And the measurables this guy has definitely follow that trend of explosiveness that we just talked about with Kalijah Cansey. I mean, he is 6'3", 263, and ran like a 4.5 40-yard dash.
Yep.
Like pretty freakishly athletic. A couple of pro comparisons I had heard, more than one person said he reminded them of Jason Pierre-Paul. Maybe seems like a bit of a reach, but obviously if this guy can harness that potential, he has the athleticism and he has the length to maybe go out there and be a big game edge rusher here for the Bucs over the next few years. But I don't know. Nothing against the player, obviously, but I did feel a little underwhelmed with this pick.
This was the one, it felt like a tad bit of a reach. And here's why. I think the front office's mind might have been, you like this guy enough. He's here, and you don't have a fourth round pick. So if you're not going to take him here, you're not getting him because he's not lasting until the fifth round. He was likely going to be a pretty early fourth round pick, I think. So early to mid fourth round pick. So instead of taking your chances, just go ahead and grab him. Now, I even mentioned, and it's actually funny that we're doing the grades because if you go over to bucksnation.com, I have also graded a little bit more in a written sense, per se. I've graded each Bucs draft pick as well. But I mentioned that it would have been ideal, I think, to maybe move down 4 or 5 spots, pick up an extra pick. But I don't know if that was an option. Like, we don't know. We weren't in that room. That there may have not been any takers for that draft pick. So if you're sitting there and you like the guy enough, take him. That being said, it still did feel like a reach. Is he? I think he has the potential to be not really necessarily maybe a 10 sack guy, but I think he's a guy that could be in a rotation that gets you 6, 7 sacks a season because of the athlete he is. And like you said, the freak ability at 6'3", 263 to run a 2.5, that'd be really nice. To run a 4.5, 4.51, I think officially 40-yard dash. That's incredible. Like, and I get the Jason Pierre-Paul thing. I think Diaby might actually be a little bit more explosive, like a little more quick off the ball than Pierre-Paul was in his prime. So I think they are different players, but I do think it was a slight reach. So if you want to give your grade for it, I figure we could alternate who gives out first grades. So I liked it, but it felt like the value here wasn't the same as the first two with Cansey and Mock.
Yeah. Again, nothing against the player. Excited to see what kind of potential he can obviously play himself up into. But as of right now, the way that this pick leaves me feeling is C plus.
And I also have a C plus on Yaya Diaby. So, like I said, shout out to Pewter Report. They've been on Yaya Diaby for a little bit. Even go back to the Senior Bowl, I think. So, or I think it was the combine where he was like telling reporters, he was like, "No, just wait till I get out there. Just like wait till I get out there." And if you watch like the draft call things, where like the Bucs are calling the prospects, when they call Yaya, he's like, "Hey, you guys got to go one." So like, I like that he oozes confidence. Like, he oozes confidence in himself, and that's a good thing. So, I think if he turns into a Jason Pierre-Paul, it's a freaking A+ draft pick because I mean that's a great player there, especially in the third round. But we will see. And I think again though, he's a player that can make an impact now and in the future. Obviously now would be in a little bit more of a limited role, but hey, they needed more depth on the edge, and I think they seriously considered Nolan Smith in the first round. I think if Cansey wasn't there, I think Nolan Smith might have been their pick. So they need an edge rusher, and they found him here.
Yeah, we talked a lot about value over the course of the offseason leading up into the draft, and now after the draft, we continue that same conversation. But for a Bucs team that's been getting younger just about everywhere, the biggest thing that I like about this draft is all the guys you can take away and basically write them off as a day one contributor. You know what I mean? This is a guy who can come into the lineup, whether it's as a rotational player or not, and he can help the team out in one way or another. We'll talk about some other draft picks here in a second that may not be just on defense. But that's what you like to see for a team that's getting younger, relying on more talent, and obviously not throwing around money the way that they have been the last 3 years to field a team.
Oh, and also the first 3 picks here, we got defensive line, offensive line, and pass rusher. Really the first time in the Jason Light era that the Buccaneers have spent 3 straight, like not just 3 straight picks, but their first 3 picks all on basically trench play. So clearly something that they heavily prioritized.
Yeah, and I will say that, for the reactionary fans who were kind of getting upset, like, I don't know if you saw that on social media too, but it seemed like as the picks would go on, round 2, round 3, round 4, or I'm sorry, no round 4, but round 5 goes by and the Bucs haven't drafted any flashy running backs or new wide receivers. People were kind of getting upset, but the fact of the matter is, like, the NFL draft, we really don't know how these guys are going to do. You know what I mean? So it seems
nobody does. It's a guess.
It seems to me, it seems incredibly short-sighted to get hung up on like, oh man, I really wish we got this player when you ultimately don't know how he's going to play out. For the longest time, we always got to hear about Vita Vea, Derwin James, and not getting Dalvin Cook and things like that. It was easier to say that when Dalvin Cook ended up being one of the best running backs in the NFL for a little while. But even then, I think most people are I guess, have just accepted it by now. But it is what it is. I don't think there's any use in getting upset that the Bucs didn't get one guy.
And
or the other.
like Derwin James is a great player, fantastic player. So is Vita Vea. Like, it's okay.
Yeah.
Like it's fine, and I think that still had to do some of like, what school he went to and stuff. But
right, we've seen it happen before. Same with
Derwin James has 0 Super Bowl rings and Vita Vea has 1. So
there you go, buddy. All right, so let's get into round 5 here. Some more defensive help for the Bucs, and we talked a lot a week ago about potentially looking to fill out this linebacker depth chart, and they look to do that here with the 153rd overall pick. The Bucs went back to Pittsburgh, and they got linebacker
Servosier, something like that.
Servasier, Dennis.
Dennis. That's the easy one.
Yeah, Dennis with the 2 ends there.
His nickname is Vossi, so you can call him Vossi if you want.
All right, well, Vossi was a captain for the Pittsburgh Panthers last year, had 7 sacks in a season, so Kalijah Cansey was obviously wrecking shop, and this guy was doing a pretty damn good job too. I think it's probably unfair to expect him to get a lot of defensive reps, especially that rookie season. Devin White going to be playing his ass off, more than likely trying to get paid, and Levante David just got paid, so he's going to be your starter on the other side. So for Dennis, you have to assume he's going to be much more of a special teams, maybe rotational backup guy at most this first season or 2. So what are your expectations for a player like this?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. Right now, I think he can make an immediate impact on special teams, but I also think he's going to battle KJ Britt for that 3rd linebacker spot. I mean, there's still not a lot of depth in Tampa Bay behind Devin White, Levante David right now. So if one of them guys go down, the Bucs are kind of screwed. So especially if it's a long-term thing, and even like next year. Devin White, Levante David are both free agents. They are not on the 2024 roster right now. So who knows what's going to happen? Levante David could very well end up hanging them up. And Devin White could be gone. Like, he could be traded at the trade deadline if things aren't going well during the season. He could be just not resigned. He could move on to greener pastures. So I think the Bucs needed more linebacker depth. And again, it's tough when your first pick on day 3 is in the middle of the 5th round, because you're waiting a long time and you're seeing a lot of talent come off the board. Servasier Dennis is a player who, again, is explosive. He's got good sideline speed. A sure tackler, a pretty good tackler. Gets his hands, is able to wrap up guys pretty good, which is something the Bucs have struggled with, especially with Devin White at times at the linebacker position, and even Levante David at times last year wasn't the sure tackler at times that some people really remember him. And so I think Servasier Dennis, while I wouldn't expect a gangbuster rookie season. I think he's, again, a player that can contribute in some way in 2023. And that's, especially in the 5th round. I mean, that's what you're looking for there. So I think KJ Britt just got some competition for that 3rd linebacker spot. And Servasier Dennis, who, like you mentioned, was a captain, is a natural leader. And it'll be very interesting to see how that battle plays out. So for a grade, I gave this a B. I thought it was about the right range, and I thought it was decent value, the right position. I thought they needed a linebacker, and I'm fine with the player. So, a solid B.
I'll give it a B minus. Again, nothing against the player. Not the best situation to be in as far as looking at being a day 1 starter for this team, but I like that he does bring another layer of depth to the linebacker position. He's a guy that you can plug into special teams. He can get more reps that way. But ultimately, if we see him getting a lot of reps on defense in 2023, something has gone horribly wrong.
Yes.
So,
yes.
so with that being said, I like what he brings to the table, but again, I give it a B- here, just to have a different grade than Evan does here. So let's get into round 5 here. Another trade for Tampa Bay, swapped picks with LA and moved up to get Purdue tight end Payne Durham. Now, something that this Buccaneers tight end room lacked in 2022. I mean, hell, something this Buccaneers offense lacked in 2022 was a presence in the red zone.
That's an understatement.
Yeah. I mean, a team that could get all the way down to the 5-yard line and somehow only come away with 3 points when you have the weapons that you did, or I guess the lack of weapons that they did. Cade Otton was really the only stud tight end they had last year. Cam Brate was a shell of him former self, had some injuries down the stretch of the season. O'Keefe made some plays, but come on, O'Keefe is not going to be your big red zone threat tight end.
And Kyle Rudolph was cooked, so.
Yeah, I totally forgot about Kyle Rudolph, just another name that came and went in a Tampa Bay Buccaneers uniform. But Payne Durham is hopefully going to be that solution for the Buccaneers' red zone woes. This guy had 8 touchdowns his final season at Purdue. I believe played 3 seasons at tight end and had like 21 touchdowns.
Had 21 touchdowns, yes.
Yeah, but a monster final year as a Boilermaker, and it seems like pretty good value for the Bucs right here in the draft as well. I know they had to move up to get him, so they wanted to make sure they secured their guy, but I do like the pick.
Yeah, this was the one pick that I think you could say doesn't come with the term explosive. Durham, one of the reasons he fell was he's not the best athlete. He's not going to blow you away. He's not really going to give you anything after the catch. It's a lot like Cade Otton in a way, but he's got soft hands. He's if the ball hits his hands, he's going to catch it. Honestly, he's kind of like a younger Cam Brate. Like, if you remembered Brate in 2016, 2017, stuff like that, I think that's what the player he could turn out to be.
Yeah, he was never
right.
Cam Brate in his prime was never the most athletic guy on the field ever. He just, when he was open, he caught it. And that's how he gained a reputation as a safe target for Jameis Winston at the time. And obviously, a lot of fans grew to love him for a long time. He was dependable.
Yes, and I think that's what Payne Durham could be. So, he's got a pretty low ceiling, but a pretty high floor. I think you know what you're going to get with him. So I thought this was a solid pick. Again, it's something the Buccaneers identifying a player that they like, going up and getting him. I think they gave up their 7th round pick, which was pick 2. Payne Durham, and now they have a reworked tight end room with very young talent. You got Cade Otton, Payne Durham, and O'Keefe now. Young, it's young, and I think Cade Otton, obviously he's most likely your starter, but I think Payne Durham could turn out to be a very good tight end too. So, like I said, I like the pick. I knew he's a player that the Bucs were looking at, and it was a good fit on day 3. I mentioned I think this was the spot for a tight end. I had met people that mentioned a day 2 tight end. I thought that was a little bit early, so I was certainly fine with this.
Yeah, I think it's good value for the pick. The guy obviously showed that he has some good hands to work on, so we'll see what happens obviously here at the next level. But a much more realistic tight end 2 option than O'Keefe would have been for the Bucs in 2023. Excited to see what he can bring to the table. I like the pick. I'll give it a B. Hopefully he can stay consistent and become someone that either Kyle Trask or Baker Mayfield can look for here in the coming season. Let's get down to round 6, 181.
Whoa. I haven't given my grade yet. I haven't given my grade yet.
I thought you did. I'm sorry, buddy.
No,
Go ahead.
It was your turn to go first. Now it's my turn. All right. My grade anyway, my long anticipated grade is a B+. I think it's good value here in the 5th round. I thought he might have gone a little bit earlier, so I think it's solid value here.
Alrighty, round 6, 181 overall. We get a defensive back here from Kansas State. This is Josh Hayes. So obviously, Scott Reynolds' computer report going to be pretty plugged in with the type of player Hayes is. Like you said, big K-State guy. But the nephew of late former Bucs linebacker Geno Hayes was the selection for Tampa Bay in the 6th round. I don't know a whole lot about Josh Hayes as a player. I'll be transparent with you. I don't know what the value was for a guy like this in the 6th round. I don't know if it was a reach for the Bucs. I don't know if it was good value for the Bucs. But I do know that he is versatile, right? He has been praised for being versatile. And I've talked a lot before here on the pod, especially over the last few weeks, about how for any of these guys coming in, looking for a role on this team where there may already be a stacked position group, versatility, availability is the best ability. So hopefully he can bring something like that to the table. But, where does a Josh Hayes fit into this Buccaneers defense? And does it happen week 1?
Yeah, well, it's an interesting story here on Hayes. He actually he played corner at North Dakota State, where he was teammates with Cody Mock, and then he transferred to Kansas State, where they moved him to safety. So that's where his versatility comes in. He could play corner or safety. Figures to be in the mix for a nickel job. And that if he's gonna see the field day one, it's gonna be in the nickel. The thing is, I didn't even know a lot about him. And I'm not a draft guru, but I pride myself on knowing a good bit of names, and I didn't know a ton about Josh Hayes. So he was overlooked. I mean, obviously Felix Anaduke-Uzama was on that Kansas State defense, as was Julius Brents. Both of them went in the first, I think, 2 rounds of the draft. So he was overlooked there. This one felt like a pretty massive reach to me. Just a player that at this spot, did you really need to grab him here? Could he been an undrafted free agent? Maybe, but at the same time, Keith might have been an undrafted free agent. When you get to this late in day 3, you're kind of looking to draft guys that maybe you don't want to compete with to try and sign as an undrafted free agent. So you just take him and he's yours. But yeah, as for Hayes, it's a cool story of being the nephew of Geno Hayes, and he will bring versatility. I just don't know if he's gonna be able. I mean, this is a 6th round pick. I don't know if he's gonna be able to hold up in the nickel against some of the best slot receivers in the NFL. So I think it's gonna be a slow burn with him if he does develop into something. Hopefully, he's able to contribute on special teams day 1. But we'll see. I mean, I think it's gonna be pretty much Zion McCollum versus Josh Hayes for that nickel spot, and then if there's an injury at the safety room, he could slide back there.
It'll be interesting to see it play out.
Oh yeah, I forgot to give my grade.
Yeah, how about you go ahead and give your grade?
Yeah.
I don't want to stomp on you here. The floor is yours.
This grade, and again, it's nothing about the player. It's nothing personal. It's nothing about the player. I gave it a D+.
Stiff.
It's about the value. A player like this felt like you could have got him a little bit later than you did.
Yeah, I will give it a C. I'll give it a C just because, again, I didn't know a ton about this guy before the draft. I don't feel like I know very much more now. Obviously saw a little bit of highlights, but it'll be interesting to see what happens as far as his ability to come in and contribute day 1. At most, it seems like a rotational special teams guy, someone who's going to be fighting for that last corner spot in camp. Probably not going to get it. Probably going to be demoted to.
in the 6th round's fine.
Yeah,
that's fine. It's just don't ask him to come in and be the day 1 starting nickel, because that might not go very well.
And that's the thing too, as far as tempering expectations for these late round guys. It's easy to forget when you get caught up in all the talent that comes to the team and finding good value. Because I know this next pick that we talk about, you're going to pop on, but. It's one of those things where if you can temper expectations and keep them somewhat realistic for the most likely scenario for a 6th round draft pick in the NFL, it's like you said, it's going to be a slow burn, and it is realistic to expect these guys to maybe not come in and light the world on fire right away. So that will affect his grade. So I'll give him a C. Evan, Mr. Stiff over there, D+. So let's get into round 6.
Another trade up.
Another guy that the Buccaneers like at 191 overall.
And this time it was a steep price because he gave up a 2024 5th round pick, which at the time I thought was an overpayment, but I didn't realize. I thought they were swapping picks with the Eagles and giving up the 4th or 5th, and I was like, okay, they get to keep it. Okay, that's better.
Steep price, but I think it's gonna be worth it. Listen. The last time we got this hype about a late round wide receiver, it was Jalen Darden. And where are we now?
Well, that's every year. Jason Light does this to me every year.
Right. So
and
that's why I knew. That's why I knew you were gonna like this guy so much. As soon as they drafted him, I'm like, dude, I bet you Evan's gonna be like, that's the best pick of the draft.
It is.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, that's my favorite pick of the draft.
All right. Nebraska wide receiver Trey Palmer. He had a monster season at Nebraska last year, over 1,000 yards. I kind of thought this guy would not be there by 191.
Yeah,
to be honest,
shouldn't have been.
I
mean,
pretty good value.
He was probably a day 3 pick, but like should have been gone by the end of the 5th round.
Yeah, I mean, pretty good value. And for the Bucs, realistically, we follow the pattern of speed, 4.33 40-yard dash, and honestly, a guy who I know he's a 6th round pick, and I know we got to get through camp, but this is a guy who can come in and compete right away with Devin Tompkins for that 4th wide receiver spot.
Oh yeah. I think, like I said, I mentioned this on the pre-draft show that like their 4th wide receiver on the depth chart was Devin Tompkins. Like I expected them to add a receiver here at some point, and oh, what a perfect pick! Like Trey Palmer, just Jason Light does this to me, man. He does it. Like it's like he bugs my brain.
Yeah, he knows.
Yeah, he knows me too well.
You guys,
we're
you
talking about.
You don't have to play it cool. You guys are boys.
Like we're talking about. Well, I might be in that front office. He only calls me when he needs to draft a receiver, and I'm like, oh, get this guy. But like, I mean, Chris Godwin in the 3rd, Tyler Johnson in the 5th, Jalen Darden in the 4th. I mean, come on, like these are my guys. And if he wasn't going to get Parker Washington from Penn State, the other guy I wanted was Trey Palmer, and he gets it done from his alma mater, Nebraska. So I'm pretty pumped about that. I mean, good size, and with the size, I mean, great speed too. I mean, to get a guy like that was at LSU. It was a crowded wide receiver room. I mean, you got Jamar Chase, Kayshon Boutte. I mean, obviously we know what Chase is, and Boutte was a draft pick as well. Pretty crowded wide receiver room. So, and I believe also overlap with Justin Jefferson. So, pretty crowded wide receiver room there. And transferred to Nebraska, and it showed off again that explosiveness. And again, there's a reason that he fell to the 6th. So like, don't expect this guy to come in and be a Pro Bowler in year 1, even though I may have some thoughts that he might be. But
are you saying right now he's your breakout player of the year in 2023?
He might be. He might maybe not breakout player, but he might be rookie of the year.
You got it right. You got it right last year though.
I did.
I'm pretty sure.
Jamel Dean.
Jamel Dean was your guy.
Yep. So keep an eye on who I pick this year. We'll see. Season prediction show coming probably in August.
Even we're a couple
the schedule's
months away.
Coming out soon.
Hey, by the way, I had seen, just for anyone keeping track, I believe May 11th is
not the official date, but it's a targeted date.
The supposed targeted date. So around May 11th, we should get an official NFL schedule. So we'll definitely be doing a show for that as well.
Yeah. So, Trey Palmer, the pick here. Love it. I mean, love it. It's perfect. It really is. And I think, you hate to say, you hate to face this reality, but I mean, Russell Gage, they can move on from him next year. And Mike Evans is also a free agent after the season, and he's not getting any younger. And while I don't think he's going to go anywhere, you also need to just have it in the back of your mind, like life possibly without him. So
eventually
he's not going to be on the team.
Within the next 3 years, the Bucs are going to be in a position where they need a replacement for Mike Evans.
Yes.
And for now, Chris Godwin could be that replacement, but you don't know.
Chris Godwin also only signed a 3-year deal. He only has 2 years left on that deal.
Right.
So it's not like he signed up for the next 5 seasons.
Exactly. 2 years from now, you may not have Mike Evans on this team. Chris Godwin could be your last homegrown wide receiver you've got on this team for a while.
Yeah, so like I think they needed to address it, and I think they got the right guy with Trey Palmer. So my track record still a little spotty with the wide receivers. Chris Godwin was a hit. I still think Tyler Johnson's good. Jalen Darden, though, that looks like a mess because Tyler Johnson at least contributed as a wide receiver. Jalen Darden really didn't contribute as a wide receiver, even though I think he should have been given a little bit more opportunity as a wide receiver. it wasn't good enough. So, yeah, I am going to give this grade. Or actually, it's your turn to go first. Sorry,
Okay.
I got ahead of myself.
No,
Though.
it's all right. With all due respect to Jalen Darden, it's a dirty game when you got Tom Brady as your quarterback in his final season. So, it is what it is as far as the lack of opportunity there. But going back to this draft pick in round 6, Trey Palmer from Nebraska, I will give it a B+. I do really like the pick. I like the value here because, again, I did not expect Palmer to be available. And I think he can come in and compete right away. And I think we'll see a pretty damn entertaining battle for that last wide receiver spot between him and Devin Tompkins, if those are the two names at the top of the list come July. But yeah, B+ for me. What do you think here?
A.
Hey,
It's an A. It's an A for the value here. I mean, I thought this guy would have been long gone by this point, so it's an A, and it's at a position that I thought they needed to hit as well. So that's a bonus there, and that gets you bonus points with me. So, yeah, I really enjoyed this pick, and I think it's going to work out pretty well for Tampa Bay.
all right, let's get to our final draft pick of the day. In round 6, 196th overall from Eastern Michigan, edge rusher Jose Ramirez. Kind of an interesting player.
Not to be confused with the Cleveland Guardians third baseman.
Right, yes. Kind of an interesting player. I believe had 12 sacks in his final season. And
20 and a half in his career at college.
Played a little bit of every position from what I understand. I mean, this is a guy who hasn't really staked himself out as one position or the other. I mean, he's definitely got a lot of bullet points next to his name from what people are saying about him.
He's just a Tasmanian devil out there. I mean, his motor is just, just relentless. He's just the guy who right off the snap is gonna be trying to rush the passer with speed, with power. I was a little bit surprised that he was at this spot as well. So I think they ended their draft in a good way. They needed, you drafted Yaya Diaby, but I think you maybe needed some more depth there. Cam Gill, while he's back, he's replaceable.
At no point has been an impact player per se.
Yeah. So one of the reasons that the Bucs won the Super Bowl in 2020, and I believe John Spytek even said this. Like, one of the reasons they won the Super Bowl in 2020, and he also mentioned when he was with Denver in 2015, they won the Super Bowl. He was like, you just had so many people that could rush the quarterback. Like, he mentioned in Denver, Malik Jackson and Von Miller, and obviously those two are really high-end talents, but he mentioned like 3 other guys that they had. And then obviously, with the Bucs, you had Shaq Barrett and Amakatsuji, Pierre Paul, Anthony Nelson. There was a lot of talent there. So I think the Bucs wanted to restock that, and you can never have too many pass rushers. I'm never gonna fault them for even if I don't love the player, I'm never gonna fault them for taking a pass rusher, because I don't think you can never have enough. You really can't. So and if you're gonna take a guy, I think you're gonna have to take a guy that has the potential and explosiveness to possibly hit. And I think Jose Ramirez here, like you said, 20 and a half sacks in his career, 12 this past season. He's got the explosiveness that they need. And obviously, like I said, that is a theme for Tampa Bay in this draft. And they ended out their draft with this pick. So I am going to give it a B+. I like the selection here. And it was a solid way to end the draft and add some more depth to a position of need.
I'll give it a B. Again, I like the move from a depth perspective. I like what Ramirez brings to the table, and I like that it's just another body that can potentially get after the quarterback. The Bucs' strength on defense, 2020, even 2019, 2021, not so much in 2022, but for a long time, it was having all those dogs on the defensive line who could make them the best run game in the NFL for all those years in a row, right? They obviously got away from that, and they were still a pretty good defense in 2022, but
the pass rush wasn't there.
Right. And that was a big difference because you didn't have a pass rush that was good enough to make up for the drop off in the run game, losing the pieces that you did. So now that you're looking younger at that position, why not just load up on some dogs that can get after the QB? Because even with this defensive line at the best they were over the last few seasons, I would say they still had trouble
Yes,
getting to
yeah,
the quarterback.
just with 4.
You know, I
Like
mean,
it always had to be a blitz.
let's look at 2020. That defense was great. They gave
Mhm.
Pat Mahomes hell in the Super Bowl. But
Mhm.
if Devin White did not have 10 sacks that season, what would their sack total have been?
Yeah, like
you know what I mean? Like,
their 4-man rush was like their 4-man rush hasn't been truly elite, I would say, since like 2002. Like that was the last time I truly think the Buccaneers could get home with just 4, like consistently. Like nowadays, like even when like they've had some good teams, 2020, 2021, 2022 wasn't as good, but like they still struggled to rush the passer with 4. Like it's always something that they've struggled with, and now hopefully, and I think they realize that, and it's clear they realize that they selected 3 pass rushers. Like,
and it doesn't even have to.
Servicier Dennis, I believe, had 7 sacks in his career in his last season at Pittsburgh, so he's a guy that can rush the passer.
Yeah, and it doesn't even have to show up in sack numbers. Right? It doesn't even have to show up in an extra 5, 10, 15, maybe 20 sacks a year. It has to show up on game film when you look at why some of these offenses are coming into town and they are just throwing the ball all over the yard. And that's because nobody can pressure the quarterback at all. I mean, for the longest time, we mentioned it before. We'll mention it again. That 2021 playoff game against the Rams, for 3.5 quarters, nobody could get to Matt Stafford. Nobody touched him. And that's been an issue for even the best Bucs teams that we have seen over the last couple of years. So I like this draft. I like the pick. I believe I gave it a B, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. Yep.
So that's the draft, ladies and
gentlemen.
gentlemen.
And I have one take, and I don't have the take back, but it's just one take. When it's one take, I don't do take back.
Okay. All right. Okay. It sounds like a technicality because you forgot the bag again this week, but I'll let it slide.
I couldn't find it, but still can't find it. I will find it. But if not, I'll just have to make a new one, which it involves a Sharpie and a brown paper bag.
Yeah, you could have made a new one and said, here's the old one. I found it. Me and everyone else would have believed you.
Well, you just gave me an idea. Undrafted free agent Sean Tucker out of Syracuse is the second best running back on the roster. So there's that.
Wow. Okay, so I wanted to ask you before we actually wrap this pod up. It's a huge list of undrafted free agents. We're not going to sit here and break down.
Of them.
Yeah, we're not going to sit here and break down every single guy, but you just mentioned the running back there. Any other players that really jump out to you that you didn't think would be available?
I don't really know. Obviously, Cade Warner is cool. I thought he'd be available, but like it's cool being Kurt Warner's son. That's obviously pretty cool. Chris Murray, the offensive lineman from Oklahoma, was somebody I thought might get drafted. So he's a guy that I thought maybe, but like Sean Tucker, I thought for sure was going to be a 5th or 6th round pick, and pretty amazing that he was able to last to that point. And don't get me wrong, there's a reason he's undrafted. Like they know more than we do, right? But yeah, I do like the Sean Tucker thing. I think he's got a pretty good shot to make the team, especially, I think they want to carry 4 running backs, and right now it's Rashad White, Chase Edmonds, Keyshawn Vaughn, and then question mark. Like there's really not that like solidified 4th guy. So I think Sean Tucker has a pretty good shot to make the roster.
Hey, and with Gio Bernard officially announcing his retirement just last week, do not rule out the possibility that the Bucs look to bring in another running back here in the second wave of free agency. There are still guys out there. There's not going to. Yeah, I was going to say there's not going to be a reunion in Tampa, but Leonard Fournette, last time I checked, is still a free agent running back. So curious to see what happens there with him.
They're gonna fill 2 holes. They're gonna get Leonard Fournette and Donovan Smith. That's what it's gonna be.
Bring back Donovan Smith as a backup left tackle.
Yeah, and another undrafted one is Maryland wide receiver Raheem Jarrett. He's another guy that I thought might have been selected in a draft and wasn't. So he'll have another chance to make the roster here. So I think there's going to be some opportunities here for some undrafted free agents to make this roster this year, because the Buccaneers have a lot of open spots now. Like we talked about, those spots are not filled by veterans anymore. Yep. So there's going to be some opportunities, and more opportunities than the last 3 seasons, for undrafted free agents to finally make that team. And I know that a lot of people always love that. They love the Adam Humphreys, the Cameron Brates, the guys that are undrafted and make the team. And now you're sort of getting back into that. Will it be wide open in every spot? No, like it'll be difficult to make it still at some spots, but there'll be some guys that'll be able to impress enough to stick on the roster here. And the past 3 seasons wasn't really the case.
Yeah, that's what I'm most excited about coming away from this draft is the prospect of what these guys could become on the roster. Because again, we talk about how they can contribute week 1, and that was a common theme when the Bucs were still fielding a Super Bowl roster. Is like, okay, well, you can measure this draft class on who's going to come in and contribute, but they have a much bigger opportunity now than they did over the last few seasons. And even the guys who have been on the team for a year, 2 years now, still have room to grow. And that's going to be interesting to watch as this Bucs team gets younger headed into 2023. But that's the pod. Before we wrap things up.
I think you sort of want to go on the same route I do. So
before we wrap things up, we'd be remiss if we didn't say anything at all. I don't want to get into too much detail because everyone knows everything they need to. It is an incredibly tragic story surrounding Shaq Barrett and his family. And I really don't even think there are words I could put together to even try and wrap my head around how their family feels right now or just what they are possibly going through. There's nothing I can say on this pod that's going to make anything better for anyone involved in that situation. But I think we just do want to take a minute to express some deep love and condolences and thoughts and prayers and whatever it may be for Shaq Barrett and his family right now, because I mean, it's just an incredibly sad story. And obviously sending all of our thoughts and love over to that family.
Yeah, an unspeakable tragedy. Just like you said, there's not there's not words. There's nothing that we can say on this podcast right now. There's nothing that anybody can say right now that's gonna help. But what we can do is be there in support, and bring as much support as you possibly can in the most difficult time in Shaq Barrett's life, probably. So, just a sad tragedy and a really sad day. And I hope everything, the entire Barrett family is okay, and I hope they can somehow find the light in this, because it's very hard, and that is so incredibly tragic. And yeah, just like you said, want to go out, our hearts go out to the entire Barrett family and anybody affected by this.
Yeah, and love the ones around you, man. I know some people may think it sounds corny and it's not the tough thing to say, but nothing is guaranteed. Nothing at all is guaranteed. I mean, we've obviously lost some people over the past couple of years that we still think about day in and day out. Was missing Mark Cook a lot this week talking about the draft, and even everyone's reaction to the Cody Mock pick was, man, I loved it. Man, getting another ginger badass on this team would have been awesome to get some reinforcements down there in the locker room for Cookie, and we always think about him. But yeah, if you love someone, let them know. And with that being said, every single person listening right now, we love you guys, and we appreciate you taking the time to listen to just two jabronis talk about Buccaneers football. We've been doing this now for going into our 7th season, which is insane. So we have appreciated you guys giving us support along every step of the way, and we love you for it. So this is a close-knit community. Everybody in Tampa Bay has each other's back, obviously, and as of right now, sending all of our love and best wishes to Shaq Barrett and his family. But ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for this week's episode of the Cannon Fire Podcast. Thank you so much for hanging out with us over the last hour or so. Follow the show on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. All of those are Cannon Fire Podcast. Best place to go for updates on the show. And of course, Bucs news as it happens. Speaking of Tampa Bay news as it happens, you can follow my co-host Evan on Instagram at Bucs_Daily, where he just rolled out some fancy new graphics and a nice facelift for the #1 Buccaneers fan page on Instagram. You can also find him on Twitter at EvanNFL and check out his written work at BucsNation.com. I know you have got the draft grades, which people can check out if they want to get some more in-depth details on what we talked about here today. But you have anything else in the hopper this week?
Well, I have another one that actually released today. It is looking at the rest of the division and ranking the Buccaneers, Panthers, Saints, Falcons, ranking each draft class. So if by some chance you are a Panthers, Saints, or Falcons fan listening to this, go ahead and check that out on bucsnation.com. So you can get my thoughts on how your team did, how your class was, as well as a little bit more on the Buccaneers. So I have that up on bucsnation.com right now.
Good stuff. Be on the lookout. And last but not least, you can find myself, Instagram and Twitter at Rhettakus, RHETTAKUS. If you follow me, I will follow you back. But once again, that's the show. Thank you guys for hanging out with us. We will talk to you next week with more Tampa Bay Buccaneers news and updates. Thanks for listening. I'm your host, Rhett Matthew, signing off from my co-host, Evan Wanish. We'll catch you in the next one. Until then, and as always, go Bucs.